All right, so you're going to begin to tour clients through homes. How the hell do you do that? Well, let me break it down with my first client. This wasn't my first client. My very first client was a divorcee who I sold a home to that very first month. It actually put it in my mind that you could sell a home a month. The second month I sold a home, and then the third month I was feeling a little cocky, so I started working with Arsenio Fernandez. Yeah, that's right. I am memorializing this individual client on film for posterity. Why? Because I showed Arsenio Fernandez 40 homes. That's right, 40. It took me about 3.5 months. He was very particular. At the end of the day, he just stopped calling me back one day. It wasn't until maybe 4 months later, I actually bumped into one of his adult children because he also brought a different family member every time to go look at a house, that they told me that their dad actually bought a house with a different agent after I showed him 40 homes. And that's when I began to learn that there should be a specific way and criteria, that actually just getting a client wasn't the hard work. Learning how to show them homes appropriately was just as hard as acquiring a first client. So I'm going to break it down for you on exactly how to tour clients through homes. Thank you, Arsenio Fernandez. This is the first step. It starts with a strong buyer's consultation. Right now, I've been saying do a buyer's consultation, do a buyer's consultation, do a buyer's consultation in about half a dozen videos. And I know it's awkward, it doesn't feel correct. In fact, what you want to do is get into showing homes as soon as possible. It's fun, it's also what lets the client be delighted, and it doesn't require you to look like a professional because all you're doing is unlocking doors. But let me tell you, if you just begin to show a client home before you've actually done a buyer's consultation, you're setting yourself up for an Arsenio Fernandez type experiment. So at the buyer's consultation, one of the things that I share with you in that video is I would rather ask you 500 questions to narrow it down so we only go look at 5 homes than just ask you 5 questions so we go tour 500 homes. So assuming you did your job right, you did a strong buyer's consultation, you got them all dialed in, you took their 20 must-haves and you narrowed it down to actually 5 realistic haves. And then one of the last scripts you say in the buyer's consultation is, it's very unlikely I'm going to be able to find you a home that has all 5 of these criterias exactly as you're envisioning them. So any home that has at least 4 of the top 5 is a home I think we should go see. Okay, so now you know, you're just assuming that any house you're looking at has 4 of their top 5 must-haves. Maybe they had to have 3 bedrooms. Maybe it has to be under 600 grand. Maybe it has to be in the school district. Maybe it needs to have granite count. Whatever their criteria are, this house has to have 4 of the 5 must-haves for you to show them. If it doesn't have 4 of the 5 must-haves, your question before you actually go tour the home is, help me understand why we're going to go look at this particular house. It doesn't seem to have 4 of your top 5 must-haves. And if they have a good reason for why it's important, or maybe you're just also want to go see the house and you go show them, that's okay. But let's just assume all of that was done. And so here you are. You're beginning to show clients homes. You did a strong buyer's consultation. You know at least 4 of their 5 top must-haves are, and before you walk into the very first door, you must say to them, with all my clients, such as yourself, I like to play a game. Now, it's a game, but it's also really helpful for you. So we're going to tour this house, and because it's the first house that we've seen together, it's going to be the pedestal house. You know what a pedestal house is, right? Like anything that's on a pedestal is like the number one. It's like it's like the most senior, it's the one you're most looking for. So any house we see today is going to be the pedestal house. After we see this first house, we're going to go to a second home. And then you're going to have to decide which home actually takes the spot on the pedestal, because there can only be one. And I get it. You spouse might like one house and you husband might like another one. You're going to be in disagreement. Before I'm going to show you the third home, you guys both have to come to agreement with what the pedestal house is. Because the worst thing I can do for you as your agent is let you, Mrs. Buyer, fall in love with one house and you, Mr. Buyer, another. We never get anywhere. So tonight, when you go home, you guys can argue and debate it back and forth. You can change which house was the pedestal house. But before we go see that third home, you must tell me between house 1 and 2, which one was the pedestal house. And the other one, we're going to erase from our memory. We're going to pretend it didn't ever exist. This is why that game is so important. We're going to tour this first home and you're going to fall in love with the backyard. Then we're going to do the second home and you're going to be like, this is the kitchen that I have to have. And then you're going to begin to compare every other home out there to a Frankenstein house that doesn't actually exist. And that's the reality of what we're doing. We're no longer looking on Zillow. We're not trying to build some fantasy house. We're actually seeing what your dollar can afford. And we do that by being real, and by choosing one house after the other in sequential order to see which one's going to be the pedestal house. Is that fair? Now, I'll tell you, that sounded like a lot of words, but in reality, that took me like 45 seconds to explain outside the front door. And they're so excited, they're going to agree to it. And so you don't have to really worry about this at this point forward. That's for you to bring up again at the second house. Don't even mention the pedestal house again between now and when you go see the second home. So you just open the front door for them. They walked in, and let me share with you how you can look like an expert. If you've rewatched my course or my class on the DISC profile, you're already going to know which one's the dominant personality and which one's the one that maybe wants you to kind of stick with them. So the dominant one kind of wants to do their own thing. And if they walk off with their significant other, or they maybe have some family with them, the most important thing you can do with someone who has a dominant personality trait is just let them go do. Don't try to explain it. Don't show up and say, well, this room has 184 square feet, or look at the louvered doors. They don't care. They don't really want you there for that. They kind of want to be the one to explain and kind of educate their other family members on how the whole process goes. So the best thing you can do if you're showing homes to someone who has a dominant personality trait is hang back a room and a half, right? So they go into the master bedroom, you stay like not even in the hallway, you stay in the living room. You just be attentive, be around to what they need, be ready to answer any questions, but don't be in the same space as they are. The more you show homes, and maybe you have a client for a couple months, then you actually get to be more, you kind of understand their nuance, and you understand what they want from an agent. But to start off with, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Do not, if they're in one room, don't even be in that room with them. Stay in the archway, stay in the doorway, and be a silent observer. You know, I get it. I remember when I was a brand new agent, I started showing homes and I just felt the need to talk. You know, I talked myself out of more than a couple sales, to be honest. One particular time, we toured a home and it had these old Craftsman windows. They were drafty and they were breezy and they weren't really energy efficient. And then we go see another home and it had these vinyl pane windows. And it was actually going to be, I don't know, probably $12 a month is what I was going to say on their electricity bill, just because they had these vinyl windows. And I made a point of pointing out, oh, this has vinyl windows. It's actually what you need in a home. It's more energy efficient. I was just trying to sound smart. But you know what I did? Is that every other home we looked at, they started seeing, oh, this one doesn't have vinyl windows though. We went through house after house that would have been a great fit for them, but because I kind of opened my big mouth and talked about the importance of vinyl windows, they passed on home after home. So don't do that. Just let them be in their process. The things that you actually want to step to the plate and actually point out to them, or maybe it's like it's an electric panel that's been recalled, or the siding's like T111, or one of these products that isn't in use anymore. But if it's just about cosmetic, don't even insert foot into mouth, because let them be the decider of what's important to them. If they come back and say to you, hey, what do you think about the energy efficiency of these windows? Of course, at that point, you can kind of share your perspective, but be very cautious just to kind of open your mouth and just share information. Let that be part of the process. So let's rewind, and what I just said is, when they go into a home or they go into a room, be a whole room and a half behind them. Especially if it's your first time touring. The more young you are in this business, they're going to kind of pick up on that. They're going to kind of see that you don't necessarily have the kind of experience level that they would maybe want from a seasoned agent. But what you do have is tact, right? I don't know if this example actually lands with you. I'm not much of a golfer, but I have golfed with enough friends who said they don't care how bad I am. They just care that I follow the correct course etiquette. And so the same thing can be said for you in showing homes. They might discover that you're a younger agent. That's okay. Just don't break any showing homes etiquette. Give them their space. Be helpful. Do not be on your phone. In fact, when you're showing a home, they might walk off down the hall and you're kind of bored. And because this is such like an Instagram society, you just want to pick out your phone and scroll. Don't do it. If you're showing a high D personality, maybe they don't want you in the room, but they want to know they have your full attention. So leave your phone on silent. In fact, the best thing you can say to a client when you're in a buyer's consultation is, when we're together, I will not actually answer my phone. You're going to get my full attention. That just means you have to know that whenever you call me and I don't answer my phone, I'm probably with a client. Well, they don't know that you did nothing that afternoon, but it actually is a great precursor to let them know like your rules of engagement. So just follow them. When you're with a client, don't be on your phone. Be attentive. If at anything, have the Zillow profile pulled up, or like the Northwest MLS or whatever your multiple listing service profile pulled up, so you can actually answer questions about the phone. But just kind of tour from a convenient distance. At that point, they're really not looking at you to be the expert. They're going to ask you questions, and there's no question that you actually need to have the answer to. And let me show you how that can play out. Everybody has that father-in-law that has to show up and sound smart. And so he wants to be smarter than you. So just let him. And he's going to say something like, oh, this is a Federal Pacific panel. These were recalled, weren't they? And your best answer is, you know what? I don't ever want to give you incorrect information. Give me 3 minutes. Let me pull that up and see if I can find that out. That's it. There was a specific time I was working with a client. They were a high C client, which is that compliance. They're the ones that actually wanted about numbers and math and all the statistics. And they asked me about a lot line adjustment the house had. And they asked me in such a way that I should have known what they were talking about. They're like, oh, and so the lot line adjustment's 4 feet, right? And I said, you know what? Let me double check on that and get back to you. Well, it turns out there was never a lot line adjustment. This guy didn't know what I was talking about. But what if I had said and acquiesced and be like, oh yeah, it's 4 feet. And then to only find out later there wasn't really a lot line adjustment? Take the pressure off yourself. You don't need to actually be the expert. You have to be the resource to get them any answer they want in the time that you commit to. So frequently, you're going to be showing a home and you can tell right away this isn't the right fit for the client. Like, they're not actually going to want to buy this house, but they're going to ask you dumbass questions. They're going to be like, so is the lot line adjustment actually comes up more than often than not, because people want to know about the property lines or the proximity, or maybe they're going to see like there's some old security alarm panel that's sticking out from one of the walls, and they're just more curious about it than anything. And they're going to say, so is that a security panel or what's that connected to? And if you respond with, I will get that answer to you right away, then you're going to find yourself at the end of the day having 13 questions to 13 different homes that they don't really want to see that you have to go get answers for. So this was always my response. That's a great question. I haven't seen one like that. If this actually happens to be a house we consider writing up, I'll make sure to get you that answer. That's what you say. That's going to save you from doing so much homework. So again, when they ask you a question you don't know, you say, that's a great question. I want to make sure I get you the right information. And then when they're asking you a question about a house that you already feel like isn't going to be the one they want to know, but they just have that kind of curiosity factor that's been triggered in them, I always respond with, that's another great question. If this happens to be a house that you consider writing an offer up on, I'll get you that information. So between the Pedestal Script, just kind of following them a room and a half behind, being attentive, and then answering the questions the way I just shared with you, you are really in a good position to tour homes like a pro. Now, frequently the family will split up. If you're showing homes to a husband and a wife, occasionally they'll go look at them together, but most often than not, one goes one way, one goes the other. Who do you follow? Well, it goes back to who's the dominant individual, right? So there is going to be the individual that wants you to stay right with them. He or she's going to ask a lot of questions. They're the ones that are going to want to be more social. And then more often than not, there's going to be the individual that just kind of wants to go tour it really quick and take their own information because they still don't really trust you yet. So who should you follow? Let me tell you, it's a double whammy with this one. You want to be attentive to the one that doesn't want you there because they're the ones you're still trying to win over. And then you want to be available to the one that actually wants to be kind of hanging with you, be your buddy. So to me, it's not you just pick one, you're kind of going back and forth, right? So there will be, and I hate to use stereotypes, but more often than not, it's the husband that wants to go in the garage and see like how the furnace works and where all the electrical panel stuff is. So I would go check in on him, be like, looking at the panel, he'd be like, yep. And I go right back to the wife who'd want to talk about, oh, I could do this and this in the kitchen, or what do you think if we knock this wall down? What would happen? And I'd say, actually, that's a great question for the contractor. If this is a house we actually want to write up, I'll make sure I get you that answer. And I'll actually line you up with a couple of contractors. Turn right around and go right back, not into the personal space of that guy, but by now he's actually looking at the GFCI outlet that's in the garage. And he's saying something like, do you really need a GFCI behind this firewall? And your response is, it's a great question. If this is a house that we actually want to write up, I'll make sure to give you that answer. And then you go right back. That's what showing homes is. Right? Like, you're never not on your guard, and you're always working to see what your client needs from you. The real estate agents that just kind of show up and post up in the living room or actually sit down on the furniture, God forbid, don't ever sit down on the furniture, right? Like, that's for them to do. You're there, you're on the clock, right? So you're working. So if they're just kind of walking around, milling around, and it's a house that you think might actually fit their needs, and you think it's a house that they should actually consider writing, I encourage them to stay longer. And the way to do that is you walk them into the kitchen, because there's always something to look at in the kitchen. Think about it this. If you're staying in the living room, there's not that many cabinets to open. There's not that many, you're just staying in the living room. So the best place to get someone to kind of nest is to walk them into the kitchen. Open the refrigerator. Talk about the cabinet type. These are shaker panels in the cabinet. Is that what you like? Just get them engaged. The kitchen is the best spot to begin these conversations of engagement. Now, there are statistics that a longer a buyer is in a house, the higher propensity is that they're going to like it. So, if it's a house they're not going to buy, I want to get them out there as soon as possible. Why? For one, we're wasting time. Two, I don't want them to start to really like a house that's not the right fit for them. It's just going to be, going back to my Pedestal Script, it's just going to be one more thing for them to compare to another home. So the moment I could tell the house wasn't right fit for the client, I pulled a line straight out of Swingers. This house is dead, let's get out of here. And they'd kind of say things like, oh, I want to just go see the backyard. I'd be like, hey, we're not here to look at houses. We're here to buy a house. Let's go look at the next one so we can spend more time there. Oh, yeah. And that would kind of redirect them. If it's not a house for them, get them out of there, right? Because if they're in this house, they fall in love with the backyard, they fall in love with the kitchen, then they meet a neighbor and they go, oh my gosh, Steve, the neighbor's the greatest. But at the same time, it's not in a school district they can be a part of. They just fell in love with the house they know they can't have. And so now they're looking for the next house and they're going to compare the neighbors just like they did to the neighbor of this one. I know, you never get to let your guard down, but at the same time, we get compensated really well if you can figure this out. So that's just my 2 cents on how to tour homes effectively and efficiently. I was actually kind of proud. I mean, to share that I'm proud of this makes it sound like you're just kind of like putting clients in homes they shouldn't buy. But I was really good at getting clients down to no less than 7 homes we found the right fit. Because if you are an active listener, you're engaging with them, and you're actually helping to redirect. They're going to send you a home that's not a good fit for you to look at. In the email, they're going to say, we got to go see this house. And my response would be, what changed with your top 5 must have? Exclamation point, right? Mirror matching, kind of the same enthusiasm. And they'd say, oh, well, nothing. We just wanted to see it. And I'd say like, okay, well, then go to an open house, but we're here to buy you a house. I can get them down within 7 homes. We'd find the right house for them. There you go, touring homes.